The flashbulbs from the paparazzi line blinded me for a fraction of a second. But it was my mother's voice that actually made the room spin. "Get this freeloader out of the VIP section," Evelyn sneered, her voice cutting cleanly through the thumping bass of the launch party. The private security guard's massive hand hovered just inches from my shoulder. He looked down at my simple charcoal blazer, back at the sea of sequined influencers and beauty editors. I watched my sister Harper take a slow sip from her crystal champagne flute. She didn't look at me. She just adjusted her designer gown and whispered something to a magazine editor that made them both laugh. "My name is Nora Bennett. I'm 34 years old. This is the story of how being thrown out of my own family's celebration triggered the absolute dismantling of their empire. For the past 5 years, I had been the invisible engine behind Ara Botanicals, family's skyrocketing organic skincare brand. To the public, Evelyn and Harper were the brilliant, self-made founders, a mother-daughter duo who had unlocked the secret to flawless skin. To the family, I was the lab rat. I was the quiet, unglamorous chemist who formulated every single serum, cream, and toner in a sterile lab while they flew first class to promotional events. Poter. I endured their constant microaggressions and backhanded compliments because I believed we were building a legacy together. Whenever the company faced a cash flow crisis, I quietly deferred my salary. Harper overspent the marketing budget on lavish personal dinners. I worked 80-hour weeks to optimize our manufacturing costs to save the quarterly margins. They didn't understand as they posed for the cameras in that penthouse venue, celebrating a massive new distribution deal with the nation's largest beauty retailer, was the legal structure of their own company. Perkser. Aura Botanicals was just a marketing shell. The actual patents for the chemical formulations, the exclusive manufacturing contracts, and the FDA registrations were all held under my private holding company, Pent Innovations LLC. They thought my name was off the main paperwork because I lacked business acumen. The truth was, my lawyer had structured it that way, to protect the intellectual property from my mother's reckless spending. I didn't yell. I didn't give the paparazzi a breakdown to photograph. I simply nodded at the security guard, turned on my heel, and walked out of the venue, the strobe lights flashing behind me like a dying heartbeat. I took the elevator down to the underground parking garage. Concrete walls echoed with the distant bass of the party above. I sat in the driver's seat of my modest sedan and locked the doors. Only then did I let out a single shaky breath that I pulled out my laptop, tethered it to my phone, and opened my encrypted corporate portal. $4.2 million in pending wholesale inventory. Cancelled. Manufacturing facility access for Aura Botanicals. Revoked. Patent licensing agreement. Terminated for hostile breach of contract. By the time I pulled into my driveway, 30 minutes later, my phone was ringing so continuously the battery was draining in real time. My mother, Harper, the head of PR, came the aggressive, rhythmic pounding on my front door. I checked the security camera. It was Trent, Harper's husband, and the company's VP of sales. His usually perfectly styled hair was a mess. His tie was yanked loose. I engaged the heavy chain lock before opening the door a few inches. "Fix the servers, Nora," Trent barked, slamming his palm against the doorframe. "National buyers are literally upstairs waiting to sign the $15 million distribution contract. And our legal portal says our manufacturing licenses are suspended. Did you do this because Evelyn made you leave?" I looked at his panicked face, feeling an eerie, absolute calm wash over me. "No, Trent. I did this because Evelyn called the sole owner of her entire product line a freeloader in front of 40 people. He scoffed, trying to peer past me into the dark apartment. "You formulate the lotion, Nora. You don't own the company. Stop throwing a tantrum and turn the system back on." I didn't argue, simply reached over to my entryway table, picked up a heavily tabbed legal folder, and slid it through the crack in the door. It contained the signed intellectual property lease agreements, PAS, the ones with my signature as the licensor, and Evelyn's signature acknowledging that any hostile action toward the IP holder resulted in an immediate, unilateral termination of manufacturing rights. Warned Evelyn 3 years ago that if she treated me like an employee, I'd start acting like a CEO, I said softly. Trent looked at the documents, the color draining from his face so fast he looked physically ill. You're going to bankrupt the family over a VIP pass? No, I replied, maintaining dead-eye contact. I'm cutting off the parasites. I shut the door and locked the deadbolt. Can't survive a war with the person who controls the ammunition. By the next morning, my inbox was a battlefield. There were frantic apologies from Harper claiming Evelyn had too much to drink, and an email from my mother demanding I stop being so dramatic. But the most revealing message came from Arthur, the independent corporate auditor I had hired a week prior to review our quarterly tax filings. He requested an urgent phone call. When he spoke, his voice was tight with professional concern. Nora, I was reviewing the R&D expenditures. Your mother and sister haven't just been mismanaging the marketing funds, been writing off massive personal assets as laboratory expenses. The silence in my kitchen was deafening. What kind of assets? A $1.2 million vacation home in Aspen, a private yacht charter. Categorize them under your LLC as botanical sourcing expeditions to dodge the corporate tax rate. If the IRS audits this, they are framing your holding company for federal tax fraud. Hadn't just humiliated me. They had actively set me up to take the fall for their crimes. I hung up the phone and immediately called my attorney. The time for family grace was over. We were moving to scorched earth. Within 48 hours, the paperwork was filed. A cease and desist, freezing all Aura Botanicals sales, citing IP theft and financial fraud. When the process server handed the documents to Evelyn at her country club luncheon, I was told she dropped her glass of Pinot Noir directly onto her designer shoes. The real reckoning arrived 2 weeks later at the emergency mediation hearing. I sat at the long mahogany conference table, my attorney by my side. Across from us sat Evelyn, Harper, and Trent. They looked exhausted, polished, glowing aura. Women were gone, replaced by panicked debtors. Their lawyer cleared his throat, attempting to sound authoritative. Clients are willing to offer Nora a 15% equity stake in Aura Botanicals to reinstate the licenses and drop the fraud allegations. This is a family matter that got out of hand. My attorney smiled. A sharp, terrifying thing. She slid a stack of banking records across the table. My client doesn't want equity in a shell company that is currently $3 million in debt. My client wants the $1, $2 million in fraudulent R&D expenditures repaid to her holding company. Immediately. Evelyn slammed her hand on the table, her carefully maintained mask finally shattering. I am your mother. I birthed you. Everything you have is because I gave you the platform to make those stupid little creams. You are ruining us. I didn't buy a house in Aspen with stolen money, Evelyn, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It silenced the entire room. You called me a freeloader, so I stopped letting you load your debt onto me. How does it feel to finally pay your own way? Harper started crying, real ugly tears, begging me to consider her reputation. But reputation is just a shadow cast by character, and theirs had always been empty. The mediation didn't end in a hug. It ended in a binding legal surrender. To avoid federal tax fraud charges, Evelyn and Harper had to liquidate their personal assets, the Aspen house, the luxury cars, everything, to repay the embezzled funds to my LLC. Paid. Aura Botanicals collapsed within a month without my formulas to sell. The massive national retailer sued them for breach of contract, drowning them in further litigation. 3 months later, I walked into the grand opening of my own flagship store, Bennett Clinical. No investors, no partners, just me. As I stood looking at my name on the frosted glass, I realized something vital. Sometimes the people who share your blood are just predators wearing familiar faces. And the moment you stop letting them feed on you, they starve. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible right now. Your first month is completely free. That's instant access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting for you in the description below. Don't miss this one.